Hey there. So I thought I would take this opportunity to show you some cool and innovative library programs via a little lecture here to change things up a bit. These are some of my favorite library efforts and ones I think that are worth noting. Not in particular because I think every library out there should be doing these exact things, but more because I think they're a great example of doing new things that are user-centered, and there's some smart thinking behind these things. Um, but before we get into these neat programs, I thought I would just take a second to reiterate a little bit of what I was what I've written about before, and that's the current state of innovation in libraries, because I think it's a poor model. I think a lot of times libraries are trying to force certain technologies into their way of operating, and I'm certainly not advocating for librarians sticking their head in the sand when it comes to technologies and new tech stuff. That's a given. But a little bit later on, you'll see that I think that this is a reactive way to act, and this is more letting the future happen to us. If we're just waiting for developments in the tech world and trying to include those into our services, that's not a real promising way of operating. And I think because of this focus on technology in the past decade plus, we've really focused on different web tools. And again, we need to know about these tools. I'm not saying we don't, they're super important. But the focus has been not on people's motivations for using this new cool stuff on the web. It's been more focused on the tools. And throughout this class, I think you know that I've really emphasized librarians learning about people's lives and what motivates them, etc. So focusing on motivations is important because no one really likes to use a tool for its own sake. No one gets up and says in the morning, hey, I think I really want to use this measuring cup. No, that doesn't make sense. People say something to the effect of perhaps, hey, I want to make a dessert for my friend today. And they use a tool to accomplish this task because they want to do something nice for their friend. And it's this focus on motivations, perhaps ice cream, but certainly motivations is important for libraries. And I think it will help us find more natural fits for ways to help our communities. And you'll read in the next section design thinking, and this process of design is a way to do that. Um, but I don't want to get ahead of myself, so cliffhanger there. And again, I'll emphasize this later, but I want to bring up the fact that waiting for the future to happen to libraries is a poor strategy, and we can use design thinking, use user experience thinking. By the way, these terms are used a little bit synonymously in the literature. Anyway, we can use this stuff, all this great stuff, to actually create the future for libraries and take a more proactive role in our future. And I'm a firm believer in figuring out and answering this question: what problems can libraries solve? And before we get to these innovative programs that I've been promising, just thought I would quickly say again that we've focused on being places of access, and we focused on bringing the information from the world to our local libraries. And I don't think this is a very sustainable model anymore. I think um, access, certainly for commercial content, is getting solved in different ways that is kind of excluding libraries, especially with ebooks. And I don't think relying on providing access to all these commercial objects is really necessarily a great way for us to plan our future. So that's the problem we've solved. I mean, this was a great problem that we have solved in the past, but I think the problem maybe doesn't exist in the same way anymore, is what I'm trying to say. If we have to do collections, why not collect something that isn't necessarily available to a lot of people? And here's an example of a library that has a very active baking community, and they have a collection of cake pans. Now, again, I'm not saying that cake pans are the solution to libraries' problems, but this is just a way that a library has done something a little bit different. You know, you read about tool libraries as well. That's similar. So I think this is stuff like this is worth exploring. And the Human Library, if you've heard about it, this is an opportunity for people to check out other people and learn from them. And it's a little bit of a, not quite a stunt, but a little bit of a, recognized as a little bit of a one-time thing, perhaps. But I really do think that libraries, whether they're public libraries, academic libraries, have a great opportunity to connect people to each other. And I don't know if that necessarily looks like checking people out from the library, but concentrating on collecting people and collecting expertise and making connections is a great idea. And this is a definitely an interesting collection. Here's a library in New York where you can check out a plot of land um, and garden on it. I just thought this was a pretty neat collection. So along with collecting, having collections for people to use, I think we should kind of flip that or turn it inside out. Instead of bringing the world to our communities, I think we need to be figuring out how to bring our communities to the world, and that is a much more interesting thing. And it's to me because it's a real problem that can be solved, and people have a lot of things to say. There are all sorts of community groups in every community. Here we have an example of someone measuring their coffee grounds to to extract the best brew. Um, and why not take these community groups and help them um, get their information out there and again make connections. I think this stuff should be in our catalogs, in our collections, and not only information produced by the community, but I really think that there's an opportunity for produce for libraries to produce information about the community. Hyperlocal information is something that big corporations aren't really going to be able to tackle. So this is an opportunity for libraries. And one example of a library bringing their community to the world is the Escondido Public Library in California. They have a great project called Library U, which they help people make videos and podcasts, and put them online and highlight knowledge in the community. Pretty cool. So another opportunity, content experiences. I really don't think relying on circulating content is a great future for libraries, but creating experiences around around that content is a nice idea. And this is something libraries have done for a long time. For instance, story time is a content experience, and we should be building upon these things. And here is one example. I've been doing some research about summer reading programs recently, and there are a lot of libraries that are creating games and engaging their patrons, not just young patrons, but all sorts of patrons with summer games that um, engage them in different ways, require them to do different things with content, make content, and consume content, explore their communities, etc. So, content experiences, I think, are good. Also, library spaces. I just learned about this example. This is great. The Oak Park Public Library outside of Chicago, where it's cold and gray in the winter, have created a pop-up park inside their library. They have bright lights with the full light spectrum, and you can see it's painted to be a very bright, nice day. This is a fun thing. This is a way to perhaps create some delightfulness, some desirability, do something a little bit different. Again, not all libraries should necessarily have a pop-up park in their library, but I just think this interesting way to conceive of library space is worth noting. This community has a need for some relaxation and warm weather and brightness in the winter, and this library is providing it. On the academic side, check out stuff about the Hunt Library from North Carolina State University. They've got a great information commons space for learning, and on this page, they're doing a great job engaging people and enticing people to take pictures of this space through a little contest. So there are all sorts of good things going on here. They're providing a great space. They're encouraging people to engage with this space in a different way and to do some of the advertising work for the library. The public library side, the Anythink Library in Colorado is a really great example of creating interesting, friendly spaces. So I encourage you to read about that as well. And this is a great example of a library space. This is a library outside of Malmo in Sweden, and it's called the Garage Library. And when they opened the library, it was pretty much empty. It was an empty warehouse, and they said, okay, well, let's invite the community in, and we'll plan together what this space is going to be. And this sort of participatory design, I think, is really fascinating, and there is a lot of opportunities here for any sort of library. Oh, and the library that the community came up with has a small collection, but it's mostly based around events and discussion. There's a cafe, um, programming, cool stuff. So another opportunity for our space is an area where people can come to create things, and this definitely dovetails with creating spaces or for being a community publisher as well. So instead of being a place where people get a piece of content, go home, and consume it there, why not be a place where people make things? This is an opportunity, something that other institutions aren't necessarily doing. Joan Fry Williams has a great metaphor. She says the collections-based library is like a grocery store, and libraries should think of themselves more like kitchens, and I totally agree. Co-working spaces, this is another opportunity, providing opportunities for people to come together to work on their businesses, work on projects, etc. And this is quite common in academic libraries and learning commons. I think it's worth thinking about. And most importantly, I think we can solve real problems, like real social problems. And here are a few examples. This is from the Free Library in Philadelphia. They decided to um, help solve the problem of homelessness. Instead of kicking people out of the homeless people out of the library, they brought them in closer by partnering with an advocacy group. And there is a cafe that is staffed by homeless and formerly homeless people that gets them back up on their feet. This is important work. Pima County in Arizona, they have a nurse in their library, and this nurse is on staff to people medical guidance and point them in the right direction if they need help. Here is a library in Kansas, Lawrence, that has partnered with organizations to help reduce crime. And this Enoch program from the Enoch Pratt Free Library is helping solve the problem of food deserts in the community. So people have access to healthful food, and people can pick up their groceries in the library. Just learned about this program. This is library systems in Florida partnering with all sorts of community groups to point people to great community services. And this is a pretty nice website to guide people to services that they could use. And I guess in all of this, sort of like I mentioned before about providing, I guess, really local, hyper-local information about communities, I think libraries would benefit from turning themselves into experts about the community, so that when, say, the Parks and Recreation Department needs to know what kind of playground equipment to put in a new park, they turn to the library to help with research and to help answer these questions. And all this comes, or all this dovetails nicely with an article that I suggest you read that I have in the written lecture here called "What's a Library Worth?" And I think it's a fantastic way to think about libraries in an ecosystem, and doing what's best for the ecosystem is what's best for the library. And I think I wrote a little bit above how some folks might think of these programs as mission creep and think that is not exactly within the realm of libraries to be doing this sort of stuff. But I definitely disagree, and I think this is a kind of a fundamental shift in thinking about libraries. And I think we need to re-examine or emphasize different parts of what we've traditionally done and emphasize those to create our future. So lastly, I just want to leave you with a cautionary tale about our official universal symbol for libraries. This is a great symbol. It's iconic, it's legible, everyone knows what it is, but it's also a little bit scary, I think, because it's one person reading alone. And while that's a great activity, I love reading alone, and reading alone in a library is great. I don't think it's really what we need to be focusing on, and it is certainly not a way to mm, ensure our place in the future. So instead, here's my take on the library symbol. Here's my revision. It's certainly not as iconic or as clear, but I think it's a bit more interesting. People gathering around content, perhaps working together. This is a bit more aspirational, and hopefully will describe libraries of the future. So thanks a lot for listening. Still a little bit more for you all to read. Let me know if there's any questions. Thank you.